Project Bluebeam. Project Bluebeam. The infamous NASA Bluebeam project has 4 different steps in order to implement the New Age religion with the Antichrist at its head. We must remember that the New Age religion is the very foundation for the New World Government, without which religion the dictatorship of the New World Order is completely impossible. I'll repeat that, without a universal belief in the New Age religion, the success of the New World Order will be impossible. That is why the Bluebeam project is so important to them, but has been so well hidden until now. The first step concerns the breakdown of all archaeological knowledge. It deals with the setup with artificially created earthquakes at certain precise locations on the planet where, supposedly, new discoveries will finally explain to all people the error of all fundamental religious doctrines. The falsification of this information will be used to make all nations believe that their religious doctrines have been misunderstood for centuries and misinterpreted. Psychological preparations for that first step have already been implemented with the film, 2001, A Space Odyssey, the Star Trek series, and Star Wars, all of which deal with invasions from space and the coming together of all nations to repel the invaders. The last films, Jurassic Park, deals with the theories of evolution, and claim God's words are lies. What is important to understand in the first step is that those earthquakes will hit at different parts of the world where scientific and archaeological teachings have indicated that arcane mysteries have been buried. By those types of earthquakes, it will be possible for scientists to rediscover those arcane mysteries which will be used to discredit all fundamental religious doctrines. This is the first preparation for the plan for humanity because what they want to do is destroy the beliefs of all Christians and Muslims on the planet. To do that, they need some false proof from the far past that will prove to all nations that their religions have all been misinterpreted and misunderstood. The second step involves a gigantic space show with 3-dimensional optical holograms and sounds, laser projection of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to predominating regional national religious faith. This new God's voice will be speaking in all languages. In order to understand that, we must study various secret services research done in the last 25 years. The Soviets have perfected an advanced computer, even exported them, and fed them with the minute physio-psychological particulars based on their studies of the anatomy and electromechanical composition of the human body, and the studies of the electrical, chemical, and biological properties of the human brain. These computers were fed, as well, with the languages of all human cultures and their meanings. The dialects of all cultures have been fed into the computers from satellite transmissions. The Soviets began to feed the computers with objective programs like the ones of the new Messiah. It also seems that the Soviets, the New World Order people, have resorted to suicidal methods with the human society by allocating electronic wavelengths for every person and every society and culture to induce suicidal thoughts if the person doesn't comply with the dictates of the New World Order. There are 2 different aspects of step 2. The first is the space show. Where does the space show come from? The space show, the holographic images will be used in a simulation of the ending, during which all nations will be shown scenes which will be the fulfillment of that which they desire to verify the prophecies and adversary events. These will be projected from satellites onto the sodium layer about 60 miles above the Earth. We see tests every once in a while, but they are called UFOs and flying saucers. The result of these deliberately staged events will be to show the world the new Christ, the new Messiah, Maitreya, for the immediate implementation of the New World religion. Enough truth will be foisted upon an unsuspecting world to hook them into the lie. Even the most learned will be deceived. The project has perfected the ability for some device to lift up an enormous number of people, as in a rapture, and whisk the entire group into a never-never land. We see tests of this device in the abduction of humans by those mysterious little alien greys, who snatch people out of their beds and through windows into waiting motherships. The calculated resistance to the universal religion and the new Messiah and the ensuing holy wars will result in the loss of human life on a scale never imagined before in all of human history. The Bluebeam project will pretend to be the universal fulfillment of the prophecies of old, as major an event as that which occurred 2,000 years ago. In principle, it will make use of the skies as a movie screen, on the sodium layer at about 60 miles, as space-based laser generating satellites project simultaneous images to the 4 corners of the planet in every language and dialect according to the region. It deals with the religious aspect of the New World Order and is deception and seduction on a massive scale. Computers will coordinate the satellites and software already in place will run the sky show. Holographic images are based on nearly identical signals combining to produce an image or hologram with deep perspective which is equally applicable to acoustic, ELF, VLF, and LF waves and optical phenomena. Specifically, the show will consist of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to the specific national, regional religion. Not a single area will be excluded. With computer animation and sounds appearing to emanate from the very depths of space, astonished ardent followers of the various creeds will witness their own returned messes in convincing lifelike reality. Then the projections of Jesus, Mohammed, Buddha, Krishna, etc., will merge into one after correct explanations of the mysteries and revelations will have been disclosed. This one God will, in fact, be the Antichrist, who will explain that the various scriptures have been misunderstood and misinterpreted, and that the religions of old are responsible for turning brother against brother, and nation against nation, therefore old religions must be abolished to make way for the New Age New World religion, representing the one God Antichrist they see before them. Naturally, this superbly staged falsification will result in dissolved social and religious disorder on a grand scale, each nation blaming the other for the deception, setting loose millions of programmed religious fanatics through demonic possession on a scale never witnessed before. In addition, this event will occur at a time of profound worldwide political anarchy and general tumult created by some worldwide catastrophe. The United Nations even now plans to use Beethoven's Song of Joy as the anthem for the introduction for the New Age One World religion. If we put this space show in parallel with the Star Wars program, we get this combination of electromagnetic radiation and hypnosis have also been the subject of intensive research. In 1974, for instance, researcher G.F. Shapitz said of one of the research proposals that, in this investigation it will be shown that the spoken words of the hypnotist may also be converted by electromagnetic energy directly into the subconscious part of the human brain without employing any mechanical device for receiving or transcoding the message, and without the person exposed to such influence having a chance to control the information input consciously. It may be expected that the rationalized behavior will be considered to have been taken out of their own free will. Anyone investigating so-called channeling phenomena right now would be wise to take this area of research into consideration. It will be noted that those who think of themselves as channelers has escalated rapidly since this type of research was conducted. It is uncanny how similar their messages are, despite which entity they claim to be their source of divine guidance. It would suggest any individual considering the credibility of channeled information should be discerning and critically evaluate where the message they are receiving originates, and if the messages are specifically beneficially to the New World Order. The Sydney Morning newspaper published an item on March 21, 1983 which announced that the Soviets were invading the human mind, the article having been submitted to the foreign editor by Dr. Nathan Abnuenji, assistant professor in the Faculty of Agriculture in Asia. It is worth quoting the article at length even though his grammar is a little old. This article relates to the Soviets who created the supercomputer we were discussing earlier and which is really important because these types of computers can be run through satellites and through space. The computers were fed with all the different languages and their meanings, the dialect of all peoples were fed to the computers with objective programs. But we are no longer talking about the Soviets, we are talking about the United Nations, the minions of the New World Order, who are feeding the computers with the necessary information. The editor of the column in which the article appeared even states that the piece made points too important to ignore. I think it is possible that the persons who have created this megamind control program could sell the software to an organization and not be aware that the client might use the program and data to enslave all of humankind. Just imagine how far they have advanced since that article was published. The advancement of techniques propel us toward the third step in the Blue Beam project that goes along with the telepathic and electronically augmented two-way communication where ELF, VLF, and LF waves will reach each person from within his or her own mind, convincing each of them that their own God is speaking to them from the very depths of their own soul. Such rays from satellites are fed from the memories of computers that have stored massive data about every human on Earth, and their languages. The rays will then interlace with their natural thinking to form what we call diffuse artificial thought. That kind of technology goes into the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s research where the human brain has been compared to a computer. Information is fed in, processed, integrated and then a response is formulated and acted upon. Mind controllers manipulate information the same way a computer for grammar manipulates information. In January 1991, the University of Arizona hosted a conference entitled, the NATO Advanced Research Workshop on Current and Emergent Phenomena and Biomolecular Systems. What does that mean exactly? It means this: we refer to one paper that was delivered at the conference which stands out for its different attitude towards the development under discussion at that time. It was, in effect, a protest and chilling warning to the attending scientists about the potential abuse of their research findings. Their findings, of course, stated that the United States has already developed communications equipment which can make the blind see, the deaf hear and the lame walk. It can relieve the terminally ill from pain without the use of drugs or surgery. I'm not talking about science fiction. A man might retain the use of all his faculties right up to the moment of his death. This communications equipment depends upon a completely new way of looking at the human brain and neuromuscular systems and radiation pulses at ultra-low frequencies. Some of this equipment is now operational within the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and Federal Bureau of Investigation. It will never be used to make the blind see, the deaf hear and the lame walk because it is central to the domestic political agenda and foreign policy of George Bush and his puppet masters of the New World Order. Domestically, the new communications equipment is being used to torture and murder person who match profiles. Imagine it to be able to screen a given population for terrorists, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations which promote tolerance and peace and development in Central America, to torture and murder citizens who belong to organizations who oppose the development and deployment of nuclear weapons, and to create a race of slave called automatons, or what is popularly called the Manchurian Candidates. Overseas experimentation is taking place on hostages held by the United States and Canada, Great Britain, Australia, Germany, Finland, and France. Additionally, there has been a long series of bizarre suicides among British computer scientists, all of whom have had some connection to the United States Navy. What it is possible to ask before such a psychology of terror is this: Would any government, corporation, or psychiatrist willfully promote such horror today? The answer is quite obviously, yes. Government agencies and the corporations that work with them toward New World Order are prepared to promote anything that will help them achieve their objective of total social control. As for the question of why, for one thing, if you terrify the public and make them fear for their safety, they will allow you to implement draconian law enforcement practice, disarm them and keep extensive records on them, and they only have to tell you that it is all to protect you, of course. Secondly, it promotes the decay of the present democratic forms of political systems, and leads societies to search for alternative methods of political ideology. Of course, the alternative has already been planned. It is called the New World Order and it will not have your safety or interests at heart. As George Bush said, read my lips. Fear has always been used by powerful elite to control and subjugate the masses. The old maxim, divide and conquer, is being played out to the limit worldwide to ensure that everyone is frightened for their personal safety, and to be suspicious of everyone else. This, too, is mind control. To go further in regard to the new technology which is at the base of the NASA Blue Beam project, we have to consider the statement by psychologist James V. McConnell which was published in a 1970s issue of Psychology Today. He said, "The day has come when we can combine sensory deprivation with drug hypnosis and astute manipulation of reward and punishment to gain almost absolute control over an individual's behavior. It should then be possible to achieve a very rapid and highly effective type of positive brainwashing that would allow us to make dramatic changes in a person's behavior and personality." Now, when we talked before about that kind of ray and the telepathic and electronically augmented communication, the kind of rays that are fed from the memories of computers which store massive data about humans, human language, and dialects, and we said that the people will be reached from within, making each person to believe that his own God is speaking directly from within his or her own soul, we refer to that kind of technology and that kind of thinking that same psychologist was espousing. That is, we should be trained from birth that we should all do what society wants us to do rather than what we want to do for ourselves, that because they have the technology to do it, no one should now be allowed to have their own individual personality. This statement and these ideas are important because it is the basic teaching of the United Nations that no one owns his or her own personality. And that same psychologist claims that no one has any say-so about the kind of personality they acquire, and there is no reason to believe you have the right to refuse to acquire a new personality if your old personality is considered antisocial. What is important in this declaration is that the New World Order will be set up over the current system, meaning the old way of thinking and behavior, and religion will be considered the old and incorrect way of thinking, and that they can change it at one of the eradication camps of the United Nations to make sure that anyone with this antisocial behavior will be disposed of quickly so that other modified individuals will be able to fulfill the needs and agendas of the New World Order without being distracted by the truth. Could this be the greatest mind control project ever? The NASA Blue Beam project is the prime directive for the New World Order's absolute control over the populations of the entire Earth. I would suggest you investigate this information carefully before dismissing it as fanatic lunacy. If we go further in the different reports we have presented, we find that the mind control operations and technology include a transmitter that broadcasts at the same frequency as the human nervous system, which transmitter is manufactured by the Loral Electro-Optical System in Pasadena, California. Loral, a major defense contractor, has previously conducted research on directed energy weapons for Lieutenant General Leonard Porras of the U.S. Air Force, who was searching for a weapon that could implant messages into the minds of the enemy while urging his own troops onto superhuman deeds of valor. The device employs electromagnetic radiation of gigahertz frequencies pulsed at extremely low frequencies, ELF. It is used to torture people both physically and mentally from a distance. Weapons of this type are thought to have been used against a British woman protesting the presence of American cruise missiles at Greenham Common Air Base during the 1970s. This weapon can be used to induce total sensory deprivation by broadcasting signals into the auditory nerve at such high power that it blocks the ability of the individual to hear themselves think. The process employed by such ELF technology are described in various U.S. Defense Department publications, including one entitled, The Electromagnetic Spectrum and Low-Intensity Conflict, by Captain Paul E. Tyler, Medical Commandant, U.S. Navy, which is included in a collection entitled, Low-Intensity Conflict and Modern Technology Edict, by Lieutenant Col. David G. Dean, U.S. Air Force. The paper was delivered in 1984 and the collection published 1986 by Air University Press, Maxwell Air Force Base, Alabama. Another pulse microwave device can deliver audible signals directly to an individual while remaining undetectable to anyone else. The technology is very simple and can be built by using an ordinary police radar gun. The microwave beam generated by the device is modulated at audio frequencies and can broadcast messages directly into the brain. Now here we come to the NASA Blue Beam project. The broadcasting of subliminal two-way communication and images from the depths of space correspond directly to that kind of technology. In his book, The Body Electric, Nobel Prize nominee Robert Baker describes a series of experiments conducted in the early 1960s by Alan Freeware. This phenomena was demonstrated as well as later experiments conducted in 1973 at the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research by Dr. Joseph C. Sharp, who personally underwent tests in which he proved he could hear and understand messages delivered to him in an echo-free isolation chamber via a pulsed microwave audiogram, which is an analog of the word sound vibration beamed into his brain. Baker then goes on to state, such a device has obvious application for covert operations, designed to drive a target crazy with unknown voices or deliver undetectable instructions to a programmed assassin. Now figure out when we hear that voice from the New World Messiah who would be speaking from space to all of the sane people of the earth who might give instructions to zealots and religious fanatics, we would see hysteria and social mayhem on a scale never witnessed before on this planet. No police forces in the world, even as a combined front, could deal with the disorder that will follow. A 1978 book entitled, Microwave Auditory Effect and Application, by James C. Lynn describes how audible voices can be broadcast directly into the brain. This technology could actually allow the blind to see and the deaf to hear. Instead, it has been turned into a weapon to enslave the world. Alan Free also reports that he could speed up, slow down or stop the hearts of isolated frogs by synchronizing the pulse rate of a microwave beam with the heart itself. According to Robert Baker, similar results have been obtained using live frogs, which shows that it is technically feasible to produce heart attacks with rays designed to penetrate the human chest. Editor's note, both the author of this report and his colleague died of heart attacks only days apart, one in Canada and the other while visiting Ireland. Neither had a history of heart problems. I should mention also that Dr. Baker does not participate in such research. It has been demonstrated that focused ultra-high-frequency UHF electromagnetic energy beams can be used to induce considerable agitation and muscular activity or induce muscular weakness and lethargy. Microwaves can also be used to burn human skin and aid the effect of drugs, bacteria, and poisons or affect the function of the entire brain. These effects were all revealed at length by the CIA on September 21, 1977 in testimony before the Subcommittee on Health and Scientific Research. Dr. Sidney Gottlieb, who directed the MK Ultra program at that time, was forced to discuss the scope of the CIA's research to find techniques of activation of the human organism by remote electronic means. So this is something that exists right now, that has been pursued to its highest degree, that can be used from space to reach any person, any place on the face of the earth. If we go deeper in that process of mind control over the people, we find that the equipment and technology has been used to influence politics in a much more direct fashion. Michael Dukakis, the Democrat candidate running against George Bush in the 1988 election, was targeted with microwave technology in order to impede his public speaking performance once the public opinion polls showed he posed a serious threat to Bush's election prospects. He also claims that the equipment was used against Kitty Dukakis and drove her to the brink of suicide. In the Disneyland world of U.S. politics, a presidential candidate with problems such as these would obviously lose their race to the White House. In the December 1980 edition of the U.S. Army Journal, called The Military Review, a column by Lieutenant Col. John B. Alexander, entitled, The New Mental Battlefield, Beam Me Up, Spock, provides further insight into the technical capabilities at the disposal of the controller. He writes, several examples will demonstrate areas in which progress have been made. The transference of energy from one organism to another, the ability to heal or cause disease to be transmitted over a distance, thus inducing illness or death from no apparent cause, telepathic behavior modification, which includes the ability to induce hypnotic states up to a distance of 1,000 kilometers, have been reported. The use of telepathic hypnosis also holds great potential. This capability could allow agents to be deeply planted with no conscious knowledge of their programming. In movie terms, the Manchurian Candidate lives, and does not even require a telephone call. Other mind-to-mind induction techniques are being considered. If perfected, this capability could allow the direct transference of thought via telepathy from one mind or group of minds to a select target audience. The unique factor is that the recipient will not be aware that thought has been implanted from an external source. He or she will believe the thoughts are original. This is exactly what we were talking about. The third step in the NASA Blue Beam project is called the telepathic electronic two-way communication. Lieutenant Col. Alexander's article continues, if it is possible to feed artificial thought into the multigenic field via satellite, the mind control of the entire planet is now possible. An individual's only resistance would be to constantly question the motivation behind their thoughts and not act upon thoughts which they consider to be outside their own ideological, religious, and moral boundaries. Once again, it is wise to consider how television, advertising, modern education, and various types of social pressure are used to manipulate those boundaries. It has been reported by Lieutenant Col. Alexander, who said, in the summary of his military review article, the information on those kinds of technologies presented here would be considered by some to be ridiculous since it does not conform to their view of reality. But some people still believe the world is flat. Now, this means a lot, because if people do not believe this kind of technology is possible, or that it is science fiction, those people put themselves in great jeopardy, because on the night when those 1,000 stars will shine from space, during the night when the new Messiah will be presented to the world, they will not be prepared and will have no time to prepare to save themselves against that kind of technology. They don't believe and they won't take time to prepare.